Hi, it's me again, and it's time for another Walking Dead update vlog. And tonight's the episode I'm blogging about. It was Sunday's episode. It's called Always Accountable. Um, I love this episode just and like it has a combination. It has only three of the Walking Dead characters in it. Daryl, Abraham, and Sasha. In the beginning, they were trying to bring out the herd to follow them, but eventually they got cut off by a bunch of these unknown people. Like they were shooting off guns and getting the car shot, window shot, and Daryl falling off his bike. Eventually, Daryl escaped, and then Sasha and Abraham were trapped, and they decided, and then and so Abraham wanted to finish it off and just need a little polish. And then Sasha says there may be more. But eventually, then we go to Daryl, who's on his motorcycle through the woods, and then eventually he was walking his bike, and then he fell, and you see him lying there, and then by when the opening intro begins to roll, he was like lying there and sitting up, looking up at the sky, like something like he died and went to heaven. Eventually, Daryl was hurt. He was taking off his glove, like there was like blood on his hand, and his arm was badly cut, and he took off the jacket, and eventually he heard a noise, and so he decided to check it out, and he met a couple of women who are unknown, and they said, "We're taking what you took from us." And eventually, all you hear, then all of a sudden, Daryl gets the wind knocked out of him, knocked out cold, and he's now tied up, being kidnapped by these three people. And eventually, this guy who's blonde hair, and we never knew his name in the episode, but we now have a confirmed character name, and that is Dwight. And eventually, Dwight was holding a gun up at Daryl and said, "Tell you what, you don't say shit, and we'll work something out." And then he goes, "I ain't what you think I am." But eventually they decided to drag Daryl when he with his hands binded like with the rope, and eventually they were looking for this girl named Patty. But eventually they went to this site, and a truck site. There were a lot of walkers, and they admit that Patty's gone. So eventually, when Daryl was in the background, the three people were figuring out the next plan, and then all of a sudden, the blonde girl passed out somehow, and then Daryl took the advantage. He grabbed the bag and he ran through the woods with it, and then all of a sudden, he tripped like he went down. He untied the rope. He said there was a walker coming, and there was this cross there's this crossbow in the bag. So I was like panicking. I said, Daryl, shoot it! Come on, what are you doing? Come on, Daryl! Eventually, he did have the crossbow, and then he killed that walker. And knowing that Norman Reedus talked about a Carol moment that was happening in this episode, now we know what it is. The walker that had the green moss had a chair. There was a Cherokee rose on the walker, and it reminded me of the episode of Cherokee Rose when Daryl gave Carol the Cherokee Rose when he was out searching for her daughter Sophia, and we all know how that turned out. Events, and then he was looking more in the bag, and there was insulin, and apparently the girl that fainted is a diabetic. And eventually, Daryl went back to the group and befriended them, and he says, "I guess I'm stupid too." So eventually, they heard some. they heard a noise that like there's this truck came up and a bunch of guys came out and Dwight goes, "We're not going back with you. You're not going to take us. You're taking us." Eventually, Daryl hid in the background, overlooking. But eventually, one of the guys, I think his name was Wade, eventually was hiding out, and he got his hand got bitten by a walker. So, but eventually, one of the guys took off his belt, and then he just chopped off his hand, amputated it right in front of Daryl, and I was just like, oh, gross. But I was just, but it was a good shot, but nothing too gory about it. Then they try to escape, and eventually they went to this house, and eventually they saw these two girls who are dead, and eventually they say they used to babysit them. And so eventually, the blonde girl came with the flowers, who looks like Justin Bieber, by the way. She bent down, and then one of the walkers woke up and then bit the girl, like devoured the girl, and eventually, the other girl said, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And eventually, when Dwight and Daryl were digging up the grave, and rest in peace, the Justin Bieber lookalike girl, that's what I'll call her. Eventually, he told Dwight about the three most important questions when you're joining the group. How many walkers have you killed? And Dwight says, too many. Too many. I never keep count. How many people you killed? He goes, none. None. None as far as I know. And then the third one, why? Um, but I don't. He said, I don't know. I guess. So eventually, Daryl offered them to join them in Alexandria, meet up with Sasha and Abraham. They have a car, and they're willing to take them to Alexandria to start over again. And then eventually, when Daryl grabbed his bike and the crossbow, they were ready to go, going on the bike. And then all of a sudden, he hears this click, and he's like, damn it. And eventually turned around, and then Dwight had a gun, pointed it right at Daryl, and says, give her the crossbow. And he says, no. And then eventually he shoots, and I thought he was going to shoot Daryl. I'm like, oh no! Eventually, I was just like beating mad, and he said, the crossbow or your life. And so he gave the woman the crossbow. I'm just like, oh no, Daryl! Oh, he's gonna come back. He's gonna be mad as pissed as hell. And then not only did they took his crossbow, they took the the motorcycle as well that I love so much. And eventually the woman said, I'm sorry. And Daryl went, you're gonna be. Oh, Daryl, he was so mad, but he didn't want to show it to them. But eventually, in his mental mind, he was pissed off because they took his things that they didn't belong to them. It belonged to Daryl. And I hope Daryl will get his crossbow and his motorcycle back because he's not Daryl without a crossbow and a motorcycle. But eventually, when he finds something to take him back to Sasha and Abraham, he found this truck. Eventually, he was very lucky that he found it under a pile of trees. Now on to Sasha and Abraham. Sasha and Abraham bonded, and they were in this like a car dealership place or something like that. And eventually, and I think I know Bob said something to Sasha in season 4, and I think is life is just sentimental, life is sentimental, or something like that. And Abraham's favorite line, the line in the episode is like sentiments make my ass itch or something like that. But it was pretty funny. Eventually they bonded. They looked around, but eventually Abraham went on the roof to look for some weapons, and he sees this walker who dressed as a soldier, and eventually he stared down at him, and then eventually he found like first he found a bunch of rocket launchers and a box of Cuban cigars, and eventually there was another rocket launcher on the walker. So eventually he decided to go up. He went up the cage, which was very dangerous. And I'm just like, Abraham, are you crazy? You're gonna get killed. And so eventually he had to stare down with that walker, and it was like thought he was going to be eating his face, scratching him, and all that. I'm like, oh no, and then he went, and then he just screamed. He just screamed it out, and then eventually he got off. He backed off, and then all of a sudden the soldier walker started fell right off, and then there was the rocket launcher. And eventually, the next part, Abraham met up with Sasha again. And then eventually, skip over a bit, he was wearing the military suit that he found. And eventually, they say, and Sasha says, we got walls, we got electricity, we got protection. But Abraham became a little flirtatious with Sasha and says, I would like to get to know you better. But I smell a triangle on the way. Abraham, Sasha, Abraham, and Rosita. I don't know where that's gonna go to, but I think it is gonna go along there because Abraham and Rosita hardly ever had any scenes this first half, but Rosita was seen mostly with Spencer. So eventually, I'm gonna predict a love quadrangle, like a square love triangle. Like there's Abraham, Spencer, Rosita, and Sasha. So I want to know how that turns out. But eventually, I don't care who goes with whom. But eventually something will probably happen there. And then Daryl came by. He picked them both up. They were driving back to Alexandria and all that. And eventually Daryl got on his walkie-talkie and says, "Hello, please speak." And all of a sudden, and then in the ending of the episode, you hear the word "help" coming from the walkie-talkie from the other person. But I don't know who it is. Some people say it may be Glenn, but people saying it's not Glenn, it's somebody from Alexandria. I don't know who it is, but people saying that it's not Glenn because I we all know for a fact that Glenn is alive, and eventually he is going to come back. I know for sure. And with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's casting of Negan, and now they're shooting the finale of The Walking Dead in Georgia. But I am so scared right now, tell you the truth. I was crying tears and all that. I'm afraid Negan. I'm afraid Daryl is going to get Negan's death. Daryl will take Glenn's death, but I doubt it will happen because he signed a deal with AMC to have his own series, and I'm sure he'll be shooting it when The Walking Dead is on taking hiatus in the show, when it's not taping. And I heard that they're shooting the Boondock Saints 3 this month, but eventually I still haven't heard any news. I still haven't. There's no news on whether he's filming or not, but eventually I know he can't cut the long hair, but I'm sure that he'll get away with Murphy having Daryl's hairstyle. I'm sure they'll get away with it. Or he'll wear a wig or something like that. Because if he does cut his hair, it won't be good. It won't be. It'll be like the badass Daryl that we saw in season one, the redneck in season one. So we'll wait and see. And right now, I am so nervous right now. Because there's only two more episodes until the mid-season finale, the end of the first half of season six. Sunday's episode will be called Heads Up, and eventually it's going to be pandemonium before the mid-season finale. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I do after when Daryl saw the Cherokee Rose, I want to see Daryl and Carol uh, be together, fall in love together, because I know they both love each other, but they just don't want to admit it right now, but because they've both been hurt in life, like Carol by Ed, who was a douchebag, Thank God Shane beat the crap out of him. But I wish he lived a little longer so Daryl could get out of that. And Daryl, who was hurt by by his family, his mother died when he was very young. He was raised by his father, but he got the worst. He got it bad. He got it worse from his father. And Merle, like that, like he followed Merle around. He had to go in had to exit Merle's shadow because Merle was bad news, and Daryl was more. There was more to Daryl than being having an attitude and a racist attitude. So eventually, can't wait to see what Heads Up is like, and so far, Always Accountable is a it was a good episode. Best Carol moment, the Cherokee Rose, and Daryl being the badass as usual. Eventually, we are close to the end of the first half of season 6. So, anyways, if you want, I forgot at the beginning, like, if you haven't seen this episode yet, don't watch this. So, eventually, if you're welcome to leave comments on this blog. Remember, no bashing, no disrespect, and absolutely no rude comments. So, well, I guess that's it. Eventually, I hope to see Daryl and Carol interact by the end, close to the end of the first half of season 6. If not, The Walking Dead will return on Valentine's Day. So maybe they'll wait till the Valentine's Day episode for them to get their first kiss because they have to go canon together before their character arcs come to an end. So eventually, that's it for now. And this is me signing off. And I hope you have a great week. And I will blog again next week for the episode Heads Up. Have a good night.